I tell him that I'm resigning, effective immediately. I'll never forget this in my life, but one of the team leaders actually, as I was walking out of the room, crumpled up a piece of paper and tossed it at my head.
So Haley, let's start with you. So how long, we recently received a message from you. So how long were you in the business and what was your position?
I was in it for 6 months, and I started out like everybody else, entry level as a rep, and then I got promoted after my second week to account manager, and then kind of hung out in that position for 2 weeks, um, and then some shit went down, and I wasn't cool with it. Like it just came down to the owner I was working for, because the office that I was at actually had three owners out of it. So I was working for one of them, but like we were all together in the same office,
Yeah.
which was kind of confusing. There were a lot of things that were confusing, but so I worked for one of the owners, and he was just like a dirtbag all the way around. So I ended up quitting, and then the recruiter reached out to me, and she was like, "Hey, our admin, she's going on maternity leave. Like, I know you just quit. Are you looking for a job? Would you be interested in like being our admin?" And I was like, "So I won't be in the field? Okay, cool. Why not?" So I started doing that, and like everything was cool. It was fine, and then I was doing really well. And the main owner, who I ended up now I was working for since I was his admin, um, he wanted me to start doing recruiting. So after I was admin, I think for like 2 months, I started doing recruiting. Um, and that's where I kind of got a different perspective of how the whole system is run.
Yeah, we've heard a lot from former owners and people on the sales and marketing side, and just now it's almost like someone turned a faucet on because we've been getting admins, 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 and I love that because we haven't heard anything from admins since we've come out, and we've just now started to hear from them. So what were some of the things from the administrative, the recruiting side that didn't sit well with you?
I realized how much lying there is. I mean, from the initial contact, so the initial contact would be the advertisements that we put, like that are placed on the different job websites, and then even from that point, it's just lie after lie. Everything that you put in there has to be like worded a specific way. Um, so it's just very misleading all the way around. And then being at the front desk in the office, people are coming in for interviews, and if they ask any questions, I had to be very careful what I said to them. Just all about like wording things a specific way and just being very vague so that like people just shut up. And not only like lying to the people coming in, but lying to reps and other employees and team leaders. Just I felt like everyone was lying, like about everything. Um, and I guess like that you're lying and that you're being told to lie about things, but after like when everyone else around you is lying, you're just kind of like, it's just what we do. It's business. I mean, they do a very good job of making sure that you feel like it's a professional environment and that everyone's young professionals. So you think it's like, oh, that's just what we do. Like this is legit. That's just what we have to do.
When you reached out to us initially, you said, "It took me some time before I realized I was in the cult, and I resigned yesterday." So you quit like the day before you contacted us. "I was involved within the company here in Tempe, way deeper than I had ever intended." So let's start with that ending statement. How deep were you in, and why do you say it was deeper than you ever intended?
What had happened was, so this main owner who he owned the office and he had the other two owners like working with him in the office. Um, I'll just use his name. His name's Kurt. He, I think he's been in the business for about 10 years, although he doesn't let you believe that. Like, he doesn't make that a known thing. But he has been in the business for 10 years. And he actually recently got engaged to a recruiter who had reached out to me and asked me to be the admin. So she and I kind of got really close because she was sitting at the front with me. She trained me to be a recruiter, and I did really well with recruiting. We went to a trip. We got invited to like an admin conference in Atlanta. So we went to that together. So when I say I was in deeper, like just so deep, it was more like this relationship dynamic between like the owner and this recruiter and then me it was just weird. It was like I was like in the middle of their relationship and like not just at work but like outside of work. They wanted to invite me to like dinner and she wanted me to start like hanging out with her on the weekends like all the time, and even she wanted me to start going to yoga with her in the mornings. So what that meant was I had to get up at 4 to drive all the way to Tempe, which is like 45 minutes from here, be at yoga with her, and then quickly shower, get ready, go straight to work, not come home until the evening, and then as a recruiter, you still have work to do when you get home. So I would be working until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, pass out, and then wake up and do it again. Just because, and I would do all this like for this couple because I felt like, I don't know, like I owed it to them because, like I said, I was just so in deep. The way these people are able to control you is very scary. And I was letting these people and this whole like organization just like take over my life.
It sounds innocent enough because one of the things that they talk about in the business is building relationships. And if you get them, and I've been out for about 4 years, so I don't remember the exact technology or terminology, but if you hook them, um, belt loop them, I think is what it's called. If you belt loop the
Yep,
person, then so I'm sure that's what she was trying to do through the yoga and things like that. So that's where you got
exactly.
that idea of, oh, you're looking out for me, we're becoming friends and all that.
Yes. And mind you, we were literally spending every second of every day together. And I mean, like, we had a lot of things in common. Like, our birthdays were a couple days apart, so we had, like, this whole birthday weekend, which was a whole nother mess in and of itself. But, yeah, you're right. I got hooked, man. Pretty, I mean, and I personally don't have like a huge support system. Like this is my support system right here. But so I was like, cool. I have these friends that I also work with, and it's like it's awesome. And I was just once I woke up, I was like, wow.
So what happened to make you realize, as you said, that you were in the cult, to use your words?
I think it was when the idea of having live work for the company as well. I think that's when, like all the red flags I was seeing that I was choosing to ignore, I think that's when I actually started like thinking about it. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, for me to be in it is one thing, but like to bring someone I love into it was another thing. And from that moment that I was thinking about bringing him in, like, it was just one thing after another. I was putting everything together, and he and I had many conversations. We both had a lot of concerns, but we both were like, well, they promise all these opportunities, and they promise all these things, and it could be really good for us. So that's how they get you, but it wasn't until, like I said, I was bringing someone I love into it where I was like, wait a minute, like, I know this isn't right. And so I was just trying to figure out exactly why it wasn't right. And he he had a lot more information about what this really was than I did. So, you know, tried to like he never tried to tell me like, hey, you know, this is what this is. Like, don't do this. Like, he was very good about letting me like figure it out. You know what I mean? Because I'm a very stubborn person. So if he had done that, I think it would have ended up even worse. Because I would have been like, you don't want me to do this? Okay, let me do this 112%. Watch me excel at this, and this is gonna be like my thing. And so he was just very loving and understanding, and just kind of let me figure it out on my own, which I needed to do because I didn't listen to anybody else.
And what makes it even more interesting, because Haley, you told us that Lev, you yourself had been in this business before, and she, according to her words, you discovered the cult for what it was and got out. So let's hear a little bit about your experience. How did you get involved, and to what extent were you involved in the business?
Sure. I mean, it's a story you've heard a lot already if you've been watching any of the great work that you've been putting out. It started out after college for me. You know, I had just finished up in D.C. at George Washington University, and was looking for work on kind of in the political scene. And also was interested in public relations in a big way because I had a great experience with that. And I think the word you used earlier, technology, I think that is more accurate than techniques or any other methodology or system, whatever you want to call this thing. I think technology, as the Scientologists would put it, is actually a more accurate term for how they do this. The technology at that time hadn't been quite refined yet. And you know the history of this thing goes back to the early 80s, you know. They didn't need it, as, you know, back then there was like a wave of movement toward these things, and they didn't really need to worry about so much about masking it because people were just down with MLMs, you know. It was working for a lot of people. That tiny group at the top was still able to grow back then, you know. But the ranks, you know, you've seen the pyramid. You've seen that it takes like 15 times the world's population for you to get to level 1. So you know that there's like where we are now there's no room anywhere near the top of that pyramid. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at is the technology wasn't quite there yet. I was duped easily because when you went on, say, Monster or Indeed or, you know, what a lot of the DC kind of job group sites that you would be looking at, you didn't see the flood 9 out of 10, you know, marketing assistant, PR assistant, all these things that are such easy red flags now. What you saw was maybe 1 out of 10 was that. And, you know, not everybody answers you all the time, and not everybody gets back to you. And these guys, guess what? Their technology allows them to get back to you within 40 minutes of you even looking at their application, or even seeing an email, or possibly have even viewed one of their ads. They will unsolicitedly find you and call you and say that you've been approved for an incredible interview with this really prestigious company. And it's always, you know, that technology was in place. But what I'm saying was, I think, like right now, it's so saturated that we've come to a critical mass of like disgustingness here. Back then, it was a little smaller, and I got caught up in a marketing firm in Maryland called Red F Inc. You know, and this is just a 23-year-old with incorporation documents. You know, who's from everything we've learned is just as liable for every freaking thing that happens in that office as anyone else there, and even more so. I just didn't know at the time. But anyway, what I saw at the time, now they kind of introduce you to the business a little more slowly, to the field, to the products, to the pipelines. They introduce you a little more slowly. Then it was my first interview was in the field. So I sat in, the assistant manager's office for a moment, the recruiter's office for a moment. Then I spoke to the owner for a moment, a bunch of really, really tough questions about you and your character, and what kind of business skills you might have that could lend to this extremely corporate environment. And I felt like I knocked it out of the park. And then next thing you know, you're in a car with your so-called team leader, potential team leader, who you're not being told that that's who that is yet, but it's just some guy, and you're driving to sell Verizon Fios contracts, business to business. And that's such a giant red flag that I should have noticed at the time, but something in me just didn't know enough about sales and thought, okay, so this isn't a marketing job. Fine, my brain gets that. But maybe I don't know enough about sales, and life is about sales, and it's all about sales, so maybe I should really give this a chance, and if there's any kind of like consolation I can give myself for having fallen into it from that first interview, whatever you want to call it, or basically free labor in the form of an interview. They got me with the idea that I didn't know anything about sales and that I ought to learn for my own edification. MIT, right?
Right.
So, yeah, right. Why go to MIT when you can just, see it on some whiteboards?
Yeah, when you can just make it up, it's a lot cheaper that way, right?
What's the point, right? So, I gave, in the end, 8 months later, I start getting an itch, because 8 months later I was doing well, and 8 months later was about a time when things were starting to look different for my prospects or whatever. But all of that is, you've heard it all. They're so very manipulative about it. It's dangled in front of you for so long. Like the more I saw my owner, and I love that we even afterwards we call them that. The more I saw this owner of record of an LLC, one of thousands or tens of thousands, right? The more I saw this person and his organization, again, it's a similar story, had a very successful business. Something happened in terms of him getting hitched to his admin. They are still living together but separated. But they're all living together, including their top reps that they brought in from wherever the hell.
Yeah.
It ended up being Tennessee and Washington, 3 different states that I learned. The more I spent time with these people, the more I learned, at the 4-month, 5-month mark, you should realize, oh wait, they all live in the same subdivision. And I don't, and I'm commuting from DC, and all that,
Mm-hmm.
It starts, there are all these things that you've heard before that start making no sense at all. And you also realize that you're, for my situation, again, this was a much more intense office. This was Sidcore. This was not Smart Circle. This was kind of like the mothership owned by the entire, it all started with Sidcore and DS Max and everything like that. So they were really the system, the Fuki, man, the 4Fs, it was all drilled. It was all on the boards. It was every day. And then before that, you did a really intense, cult-like, scary, almost bell-ringing ceremony, which you've seen on some of your films.
Yeah.
Some of the offices that try to look more legitimate these days, they don't do that.
Yeah, and actually I haven't seen, I never saw that in my time in the business, and I actually have not talked to anyone who has seen that, so I don't know if it's kind of gone out of fashion, but tell us a little bit about that.
What happens is you show up before the field, right? And you're not told until like way later what the pay structure, how it's all working. You just kind of accept your paycheck. You don't know that you're not even being paid to be there. You get into the room. You've already described what a lot of these offices are like. They're literally a desk with an admin, a really nice, almost like silly, like rental furniture, nice office for the owner, and then a room with perhaps some chairs, but usually with some shitty computer speakers at the floor, right? And covered wall to wall with whiteboards, right? And these whiteboards are also covered wall to wall with absolute nonsense. All of this nonsense is available, and can be made available, but it's all the system or this technology that is kind of made rote to you. And you get there, and in the morning, you get this wonderful impact speech from someone who's been selected by the owner of note. So someone from the group who's lucky enough to tell an inspiring business story. Something where they discuss Vanderbilt, for 20 minutes and talk about how we're all becoming Vanderbilt. So that is like meant to that's initial indoctrination. You just got there, man. You're hardly awake. Yeah. You just buzz through your drive there because you didn't even get enough sleep the night before, right? Because you were at some stupid thing they had you at Dave & Buster's. And you get there, and this is like initial indoctrination. And you get through that, then the owner or manager, whatever you want to call them, they'll come out and do their own impact speech. They'll talk about the bonuses. They'll talk about all the opportunity. They'll call out, and this is back then. I don't know how much, I guess it depends, right? Every one of these freaking things is run they're run in uniform by the technology, but at a variable because of the owner and their own temperament and insanity or whatever that might lead to.
Yep.
By the way, after, all of that, with some music and a little bit of pump up and the speeches, you get to run out to the parking lot, get out of the suit that you were just wearing for work, and put on some Verizon gear. And it's wetter, and probably some winter clothes because it's freezing outside, and go business to business, selling Verizon Fios apps for a whole day, hoping that you get like one or two. Possibly, and that you don't roll a donut. Yep. Some people do better than others, and some people go in teams, but you don't realize that you're splitting everything with anyone who comes with you. It's a whole, I won't even get into that, but how they pay you compared to what you're doing. When you really do the math in the end, and I did some accounting, there are plenty of people who've done it, I'm sure, and I've been terrified, but I've lost money. I lost money every month I was there. Yep. To gas, to food, to incidentals on the job, to wear and tear on my vehicle, everything. So, you're doing all this and you're going crazy, and then you come back, you have to bring all your paper applications back to the office at the end of the night for another impact. This is the one with a gong, a bell, people running around, acting insane. Whoever did the best gets to run around and hit the bell. Anyone who made a sale hits the bell. Anyone who doesn't hit the bell. There's freaking Lil Jon's playing in the background. That's what happens. And then guess what? After that, by the way, you also just changed out of your Verizon gear / winter clothes back into your suit to come back into this office. And have to do and in your suit, right, which is supposed to make you feel professional, run around like a moron, surrounded by whiteboards in this room with no chairs. So you do that, and then they tell you that, hey, we're all going to the owner's inviting this group over to his house this night, and this happens this is every night. They find some reason. Back then, they weren't trying to get me uh, like in some kind of extremely personal way, the way they, and as quickly as they did Haylee. But I was never on the admin side, you know. I happened to just take a break at a Barnes and Noble on a horrible day, and I saw this one book that was called How to Sell Yourself, and I actually, you know, I was starting to read so fast that I'm pretty sure I went through this whole book in less than an hour for this break. And I realized that I wasn't doing anything close to sales. That I was selling snakes and stones, which is a no-no.
Yeah.
According to Napoleon Hill. I mean, that's a quote from his book. But yeah, that you shouldn't sell snakes or stones. That doesn't actually build relationships. It destroys them. Yeah. So that was one wake up, but it was like a big slam to the face. I get back to the office after that day, and then it's like the cult thing all over again, and then you have to go for another event, whether it's a David Buster's or some other crappy place, or the owner's house, where you're just playing, you think it's going to be some nice event, but it's just a freaking crudité from Costco and Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
Right? I took a day, I decided that I needed, the book like marinated within a week, a couple of days, kind of like your documentary would for someone. Maybe it would hit them immediately, maybe it would take a little time to marinate, but for me it did. And I just took a day off, which was unheard of. I hadn't from day one. And that turned into day two, which turned into day three. And in those days, I spent all my time researching. And back then, there was no devilcorp.com. And back then, there was no you. And back then, there was just some message boards with a lot of angry people. And I didn't know what to trust, really. But I knew that something was wrong. And I knew that I valued my rational mind above everything else on this freaking planet at that time. And that it had been infiltrated in the most disgusting way. And I happened to be lucky. I had a friend at the time who was really into like hating Scientology, which was a rogue thing at the time. That all the documentaries hadn't been out yet. It was still like a little hush hush, and he was really into cult culture and everything and busting it. Obviously, not like it's not like something that he was into, but.
Sure.
And he is very into investigating these things. And so who better to come with my 15 notebooks, 3 binders, and I mean, all this material you end up with. I sold that Volkswagen. I wish I still had. The trunk was full of freaking material. Besides the Verizon crap, it was full of notebooks and papers and shit from Sidcore. And oh my, there's so many things. And it's just gone now, but I wish it were still around for the public record. I'm sure it's in someone's database.
Yeah.
But anyway, I ended up it was kind of like a deprogramming, just spending 3 days with my friend, kind of working through this thing. And he was he's like, it's not a cult. This is even worse. This is more disgusting. This is a cult of commercialism. Mm-hmm. This is a different kind of cult. This isn't one that you pay into. This isn't one that you pay into this with everything you are. And you know what the scariest thing about that? My original team leader, he finished Trinity College. That's like a top 25 liberal arts college. He was, she recruited a football player. I mean, I also, one of our neighboring offices had an actual French prince. Deposed royalty, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Some form of that. So it attracts a really large and odd swath of people.
Yeah.
And that also keeps you in a way, because you're like, oh, okay. So my team leader went to Trinity like that. How can these things come together in some kind of logical way for me to say this is wrong, until I get to that point where I realize that it totally is, or someone else has to show you. So after those 3 days, I drove with my friend because I was so scared. I mean, scared is like probably the wrong word. I was so worried about being manipulated again that on my way out of this thing, that I wanted him there with me. So I drove with him, and I didn't ask him to come up with me because that would have just been odd. I mean, he kind of wanted to just to see what the whole thing looked like, but no, I didn't think that would probably be a good idea. So I went up there, and guess what? And they were being great about my break, by the way. Usually people get destroyed for this kind of thing.
Right.
I was being like baby through this whole break thing, but I was expecting that, to come full head when I actually came in. But I get into his office, and it's a team leader meeting, which I should have been at. And I tell him that I'm resigning, effective immediately. And I'll never forget this in my life. And I told Haylee this just a couple weeks, just the day after she quit. But I'll never forget this in my life. But one of the team leaders actually, as I was walking out of the room, crumpled up a piece of paper and tossed it at my head. I mean, that's a small gesture, but it says a lot. I mean, at this point, the big question for America, I think, is like, are you ready for the college education you just paid for your child to go to this place? Because no matter where you send them, Yale, Trinity, George Washington, Georgetown, it doesn't matter where you're going to send them. They're going to get caught up in this thing because it has infiltrated every form of the job market.
Yeah.
Why, when you go by AT&T or Cox or Time Warner or any one of their retail locations, why do you only see 1 to 2 people in that store? Because those 1 to 2 people are the people those companies are employing with benefits and actual jobs to be in that store. The rest of their business is done through these companies.
Yep.
That is a major, and so I feel like we may have been making some progress under the Obama administration with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but we know what's happening there now, and we know where that's going. So, and things like, Herbalife, for example, something even more enormous, something beyond enormous and worldwide and evil, right? That we all know that is major investor Carl Icahn, this current administration's economic advisory board. So we're happy with MLMs right now, right? As a nation, I think the real message we need to drive home is that this isn't just like gathering up people from the street. No, this is gathering up everybody from a senator's grandkid, probably, I'm sure, to every kind of, every level of society. Like I said, every person sending their kid to college should consider this when watching.
Right. So, Lev, I'm curious, when did you start to think that Haylee was involved in this? Like, at what point did your sense start tingling that, wow, she might be in this too? Or Haylee, you can answer as well.
It was the first day she brought some materials from the companies that she had interviewed with. And, when it's just a pyramid laid on its side.
Yeah.
What did I say? I was like, what did I say?
It's a rectangle.
I was like, it's not a pyramid. I was like, it's a rectangle.
She went, and there are like 3 or 4 companies that got right back to her, and she's so excited about this, and she's interviewing with them, and who am I to say, right? I knew exactly what was going on, but who am I to not let her go through that experience and learn from it?
Which is a good thing. As I mentioned, that was a good thing.
And also, we had just recently met. I'm not about to force my thoughts and opinions on somebody who I am trying to fall in love with.
Sure.
Falling in love with, and then it was just like but what I did know what was going to happen eventually, right? What was scary, and I think that Haylee can speak to this much better, is that I already had a history with it, and so had she. But what I was worried about was, at what point will this be recognized? At what point, I was happy when they got her out of the field. To be honest, I was happy when they got her out of the field and they put her in this admin position, because at least that's not like, at least she had like hours and weekends.
Yeah.
So, and like, once she'd come home every day and tell me, oh, hey, on Sunday we're planning something this. Oh, hey, like Thursday's team night, this. That's when I started getting worried that, like, uh-oh, yeah, even if they give her normal hours, the technology continues.
Yeah. So Haylee, you sent us a copy of the email that you sent to your owner when you told him that you were leaving the business. And in it, you mentioned that you had a number of concerns, that those concerns would be alarming for him to read, but you knew that they would be rebutted with a robotic systematic response. So my first question is, did he respond to that?
He did. So, to kind of give you like a play-by-play of that 24-hour span. So I went into work on Monday, okay? And this was last week, by the way. I went into work on Monday. I actually had one of the reps, she was borrowing my car because she was thinking about buying it. So I was like, yeah, sure. Like, all these reps don't even have transportation. They're spending like hundreds of dollars on Ubers and Lyfts. Like that's a normal thing, and that like they're just like okay with it. Like they're just commuting to the office and then to the store and then home, like through Uber and Lyft. Like, who the fuck does that? Like, and they're just doing this repeat every day, like no question.
Yeah.
So I was letting this rep borrow my car, and where was I going with that?
That's already just a problem. So I was letting this rep borrow my car.
Because you wanted to buy it. Oh yeah, and I needed to talk to her about like, hey, I need my car back, So I texted her. I was like, hey, when you're on your break, which by the way, these breaks, like as an admin, it was my job to go over like telemapper, which is how they do like clocking in and clocking out, and then that goes into payroll because I was doing payroll and everything.
Technology.
Yeah. So it's my job to just telemapper. Well, that became really frustrating when you have 20 to 30 reps and you have to go in and make sure everything's right, and like they need to be taking these 30-minute breaks for every shift, right? And that's something I was told by my owner, Kurt, to drill into these reps. Like, it was my job to text them, make sure that they were always clocking out for their break. Like, I was supposed to tell them, I don't care if you take a break or not, but you need to clock out for exactly 30 minutes for that meal period and clock back in during your shift. Like, you have to. Like, it's legal. You have to. So this rep, I texted her and I was like, hey, when you're on your break, give me a call, because I knew she was in the field. And I mean, this rep, she's a team leader. She does really well. Like, she kills it in the field. She's just very driven, which obviously is something that's valued in this type of organization. So she called me, and I knew she was on a break, so I like went to the back of the office and I was talking to her about like, hey, if you really want to buy my car, like I would try to get a personal loan from your bank. Like we were just like having a conversation, and we had been talking maybe 2 minutes, and my owner Kurt comes in and he's like, are you talking to Sunny? And like that means he had been listening to my conversation, first of all. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, can you put it on speaker? And I was like, okay, like maybe he just watch it for her real quick. So like I put it on speaker, and he started grilling her about being in the field and talking on the phone with me, like having a personal conversation. He was like yelling at her, like right there, and I like was holding the phone. Like I was just having a personal conversation with her. And after he had spent a couple minutes grilling her, he just walked away. And I was like, what the hell? Like, did that really just happen? And she explained to him, she's like, oh, I'm sorry, like I was just finishing up my break, and so I was just like kind of like I don't know why I felt like I was in shock because he had done that type of shit like so many times. But it just hit me really hard at that moment. I don't know if it had to do with his crazy fiance like trying to control the energy all over the place, and I was just like freaking out at that point, like internally, like oh my god, where am I? Like what am I doing? Why am I doing this? So that happened that day, and I was just like, okay, whatever. So I'm just gonna get my shit done, and I'm gonna try and get out of here early, so I can go home and finish my work at home. And like I was on my way out, and Kurt like he wanted to talk to me, and he was like talking shit about the rep that I was on the phone with, and how like she should be doing that. And I was like, well, she was on her break, you know, like the break that she's legally supposed to have. That was her break, and she decided to make a personal phone call. By the way, that phone call was about her using my car. Like, I don't have a car right now because she's using my car because she's thinking about buying it because she doesn't have one, because she's spending like hundreds of dollars on Ubers and Lyfts every day. Like you look like an ass right now, dude. And so I explained that, and he was like, oh, I didn't know that. I was like, yeah, so bye. And I went home, and
I had your documentary ready for her.
Yeah.
She had already called me freaking out, and I had it loaded. I had it loaded and sitting on the coffee table.
Well, because I have been getting, the past few weeks, I've been getting so close with these people, and he was kind of like, he saw all the red flags from the outside, of course, but I was just like so entangled in this shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and he and I had many conversations, and I remember like the Friday before last week, I was just like talking to him, and I was like, I know something's wrong. Like, I keep seeing red flags, like, I don't really know, like, I'm trying to put it all together, like, I have a bad feeling, I know something bad is about to happen, like, I just know something's wrong. So, like, this had been a continual, like, conversation. We just kept talking about it over the weekend, and then I had that horrible day on Monday, and I was just like, this is not a good environment. Like, there's something more going on here. So yeah, I came home, and I just did a little bit of research on Smart Circle, which I had never done before. Because, by the way, when I got into this business, I had no idea I was working for Smart Circle. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, they don't tell you.
No idea. Yeah, I didn't know what the hell that was. So I started doing research on Smart Circle because, I mean, I never really had time before. Like, I never, like, even thought about to research about it. So I started to, and then I found the Double Core website, and then he showed me the documentary, and I was like, oh my god.
And also, we weren't familiar so much with the roadshow aspect. We were doing all telecom,
I had no
TV
idea.
and internet services at this office.
Yeah, I was sketched out. I was
Yeah.
like, what? Smart Circle does that shit too? Because we did like DirecTV, and we did mobility, and like we handle like the local internet and cable services. So I was like, we're legit, right? Like, these are legit.
That's also, I feel like there's, so this owner claimed to be in the business for 2 years. That's just this current LLC.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm sure they swooped him up at 19 or whatever.
Right.
Like most of the people who stay in the business did, or they're in the family somehow, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like, what I think is that they pipeline specific products, like their Chinese craft that they peddle at these roadshows.
Yeah.
That's different from the free cell phones they peddle on the street in New York, which is different from the telecoms they peddle to really well-educated college people. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yep.
There are different levels at which they gather people from different swaths of society, and that's where this thing is also. The technology is just is remarkable when you think about it. I
think that's also why it was so easy to kind of fall into this, because this owner, he's obviously been in the business for long enough. He knows exactly how to make it look as legitimate as possible, and it's the masking is just it's crazy because you seriously have no idea what is happening.
She says the whiteboards were covered with all of the classic stuff
Yeah.
for weeks and weeks and weeks. The day I come in, he also, we had dinner beforehand.
Yeah,
and I had a chance to talk to him, so I got a feel for this guy, right? And he told me we're so different from Sidcore, and we split off, and it's blah blah blah, and like, I gave it I gave it its due. Like I gave him his weird thing. But then when I found out that I came in and every whiteboard was empty, every whiteboard was white, and it was like all of that stuff was gone.
Yeah.
When I showed up that day, and there was no impact meeting. There was just a conference call with some national, who the hell knows, right? Where they listed everybody who made over $1,000 that week. By the way, that's a list of like 400 people. This dude read one after the other, and everyone sitting in that room, everyone had to be sitting straight up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the owner, Kurt, her owner, pull out someone for looking at his phone for a second. This dude was reading names. It was like the fallen of Afghanistan and Iraq. It was like they were like heroes to be worshipped because they made over 1,000 last week, and who the hell knows if that's even true. So I'm just saying that like shows were put on even for me.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes, because the owner, we had a birthday dinner, the four of us, right? So he found out, he did his little investigating and how do I pick this guy,
Yeah.
So to answer your question, did he respond to my email? So I sent that email at 8 o'clock, which is the exact time I'm supposed to be at the office. I sent it on Tuesday morning after watching the documentary, and then of course like crying for hours because I'm like, what have I been doing? Because I was a recruiter, and at that point I was like,
that's
great,
so tough. I
I'm
can only imagine.
responsible for all these like people. I just like bait and hook, like I just looked them in for like to have everything taken away from them. Like I did that. So I sent the email at 8 o'clock. He sent a response at 8:10, which is when Atmosphere is supposed to be going on. So I know
Right.
Yes, probably wondering where the hell I am. He said, wow, okay, well, hope all is well and we get an opportunity to talk. And then, a few hours later, let's see. Actually, it was in the afternoon.
He hadn't had a chance to check the script yet.
I think the way that I presented it was very, like, just, like, alarming. So I know that he had to, like, because he called his national consultant for everything.
Yeah.
He's based out of Dallas. Like, he was always on the phone with him. I heard their conversations all day. So I think this delayed response, like a few hours later, had a lot to do with, like, he's, like, trying to figure out, like, what he's supposed to do, what he's supposed to say, because
He had to script it correctly. Yeah.
And I was very known on the recruiters and as well. Like I was a high roller, so like everybody wanted to network with me. Like I was kind of important in the recruiting side. So I know that they were trying to figure out like how do we present this? How do we let everybody know like without letting them know what really happened?
Yeah.
So he responded through text message, and he said, "Full disclosure, none of what you said in that email bothers me on a personal level. It may as well have been copy and pasted from a site made by a failed Sidcore owner that we run across from time to time. I know the value of my business," because in that email I kept like putting quotations around the word business because it's not business. He said, "I know the value of my business and could point out plenty of people whose lives have been changed by it for the better. It's not for everyone. It's not corporate America. I get that. For the right person, it's an incredible opportunity. That being said," and then this is where they, even after I quit, because I sent that email to his fiance as well, this is where they both started to get me through an emotional way. Like, they're like, all right, she's figured it out, like, how this works, but we need to, like, find a way to get her back or, like, get her to change her mind through an emotional way. And that is actually why I didn't, like, when I, last week on Monday, when I was like, I can't go back. Like, there's no way I can go into work and continue to do what I've been doing, like, with the knowledge I now have. Lev was asking, like, do you want me to drive you? Like, you should probably go in person. And I knew, I was like, there's no way I can do that. because I knew that they would like keep trying, and the manipulation would be even stronger, and I didn't think I would, not that I wouldn't be able to handle it, but it would just be unnecessary. Like, I didn't need to put myself through that.
Right.
Like, after I'd been putting myself through it. So he said all that, and then he said, that being said, you really hurt Oli, which is his fiance. He said, whatever you're insinuating, she didn't do anything to you and thought of you as a close friend. I wasn't going to say anything, but I can see how upset she is and thought that was especially shitty. I'm open to listening to whatever you have to say about whatever you have to say it about. I just thought you should know that she's really hurt and confused right now. Because in that I know.
Yeah.
Well, in that email, I did mention that this whole corrupt, like, sickness, like, I know I used different words, but it like slithered into my life, and it like presented itself in a fake way through relationships, which was friendship, right? Which at the time, yeah, that's what I thought was going on. But after stepping back and realizing what was actually happening, I was like, yeah, no, this was also fake. All of it. It was just about control and manipulation, which I'm very familiar with. So that was his response. And of course, I've received many texts from the old admin, who I was just filling in for her, by the way, while she was on maternity leave. And Kurt's fiance decided that she and I were sufficient enough for the office and that we could just let her go. Like, even though she was expecting to have this job. And she was also a friend. She was a very personal friend for her, who had been there since the beginning of this office, right? And they had no problem just like in a 30 seconds, just like, no, we don't need her, right?
Yeah.
So I had her reaching out to me. I had Oli reaching out to me. Like, all of these like emotional text messages, you know, like just trying to get me that way because they knew that was my weakness.
One of the excerpts from the letter that you sent Kurt, that you sent me as well, said this: I now see and understand that this system is an all-consuming darkness that is designed to completely take over and pilot all of its participants. Growing up in a religious cult, I recognize all the signs. So if you don't mind, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about your experience in that cult and how that compared to this business?
Absolutely. So I was raised LDS.
Okay.
And I had a big family, 8 siblings, and you know, my mom and her husband were married, like in the temple, in the church, like. So I grew up with this shit, right? And it's not just you go to church on Sunday. This religion is your entire life. Like, literally your entire life. Like, every single night there's something going on. You need to be friends with everyone who goes to this church too, who are in your area. Like, you seclude yourself, you isolate yourself, like, you stay with this group, right? And they're all about, like, being positive and happiness, and which is a lot of what Smart Circle is about too, like keeping that positive mentality, and you know, like, everything's great, everything's awesome, even though really everything is shit.
I mean, it sounds good, right? Like, to the outsider, who wouldn't want to be positive and
Just be motivated. If you're just motivated enough.
Yeah.
If you're just motivated.
And so within the LDS religion, I mean, it's so much about control, and I had no idea because, like, I grew up with this, and this is what I was being told by, like, everybody, but I did not fit in ever. I was always being, like, pointed out by leaders and, like, always being condemned for everything I was doing wrong, which was, like, pretty much everything. But just, like, this whole, like veil of, this is awesome, this is great, like, this is such a good thing, and we're about community, and we're about families, and just, like, the same shit. Like, they say the same things, and when it comes down to it, it's about control. Because what I noticed with both growing up in the LDS church and with working with Smart Circle is it's so much about isolating you. Like, even though these are all your people, right? Like, you're one of us. Like, you are so completely isolated. It just consumed you completely, and it's just terrifying. And it's so it kind of sucks because when I finally got out of the church, it's very difficult to get out of, by the way. I sent in a letter of resignation, like, to the headquarters, and even then they had a very rude response letter, like, we can't even find your records. Like, how can we remove you if we can't even find your records? And then, like, the other thing is they harass you, dude. They get people from the church to, like, go and visit you. Like, anyone who knows you, they're calling you. They're communicating with you. They're reaching out to you constantly. Like, hey, like, what's going on? You know, and they try and, like, be personal with you. Which, like, as I'm saying this, I'm like, yeah, it's the same exact things that go on in sports circles as well. I'm glad because now that I do have the knowledge and I've reached out to you, like, I don't know, my only hope is to help people, you know, like, we've been, like, bouncing back ideas with each other, like, because I still have login access.
I've been calling Sam's Clubs. I've been calling general managers at Sam's Clubs, and they'll say, like, I wish I recorded this one for you. I called a general manager at one of the busiest Sam's Clubs here, and I told him, you know, what was going on, and at first I just asked him, do you know who the people at your technology desk are? You know, do you know who you're contracting? And he goes, oh, it's a company called Smart Circle. They're nationwide, and they're really great. And I go, yeah, they do ruin lives nationwide, and they're really great at it.
Yeah.
And I ended up he seemed like he had no idea. So I told him I said, please, sir, please, and he seemed receptive to speaking with me. I said, please, will you just educate yourself and Google them, take a look. You know, I was like, there's a documentary out there. There's a lot online. Please take a look. I don't think you want these people in your stores, you know? So I think that's something that we can do.
Yeah. I just think, yeah, it's crazy. So yesterday I was sitting in an office for a job interview, and apparently it was a group interview, and so it was just me and this other girl, and she and I were just, like, very, like, chatting a little bit, and we were talking about, like, job hunting and how it sucks and, like, what we're looking for. And she was like, yeah, you know, because this was a legitimate marketing position, a real one. And she was like, yeah, you know, I feel like I've been, like, running across a lot of scams, like, with these positions that say they're it's a marketing position. And she's like, and then the moment I sit down in the interview, I'm like, oh, I know what this is. And I was like, really? I was like, so how many of these interviews have you done? She's like, probably like 3 now. I'm like, really? And I was like, let me guess, this is what the ad looked like. Let me guess,
Yep.
this is. She was like, yep, exactly. And I was like, yeah, well, let me tell you a little something.
I think they've played their hand a little strong.
Yeah.
And now we've reached a critical mass of people willing to talk about it, and it's not just angry message boards anymore, like it was 12 years
Right.
ago.
It's a lot easier to get the message out now than it was then. So just for our viewers, this has been a fascinating conversation, but just for anyone watching this video, I want to review cult-like aspects of this business because we've covered so many of them. And this has been, if you've seen the previous videos, this has been an ongoing theme. And Lev, you're the first person to make the connection between this business and Scientology. You've brought up technology over and over again, and that's wonderful because there are so many differences, and I'm sure I'm going to get someone taking pictures of my house for saying this.
Yeah.
But the connections between Scientology and this business are parallel. But we have the technologies, like you said, which is a foundation of Dianetics and Scientology. Haylee, you talked about isolation, which is another technique that they use in Scientology, hitting on emotions between LDS and Scientology. And then, Lev, you also brought up putting on the show for you, something that, you know,
Right.
the North Korean government likes to do with outsiders. Oh, everyone has food. Everyone has electricity. Look at all these happy people. So,
Or it's a stadium full of 20,000
Yeah.
people doing a dance, but just for you.
just for you. Yeah, exactly. So we've made connections between this business, North Korea, Scientology,
Yeah.
and LDS. So if there's any question, anyone watching out there, is this a cult?
Do some research.
Here's the writing right here. I mean,
pick a cult, any cult.
any cult. What advice might you have for someone who might, like Haley, you said, your instincts are kind of like pinging, like something's wrong here.
For me, I had to find a way to like shut off, because I understand being in the business. I mean, you always have your phone with you. You're constantly, there's text messages and messages and emails and phone calls and all this shit. And then by like all of a sudden it's nighttime, time to go to bed, and you have to get up and do it all over again. Just take a second. Like, I do no call, like no call, no show. Who the hell cares? Like, take a day and just like really like whatever it is that you need to do to like get to your like find yourself. Because I even told Lev, I was at a point, I was like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like, I lost myself like months ago. Yeah. That's really scary. Because you don't realize that you just keep going with the system, man. You just keep going because that's what you do. You just push through, right? Just take a day. Seriously, take a day. Go for a hike. For me, I needed to remove my phone, remove my smartwatch. Like, everything was away from me. And I took a bath and I like meditated for a few hours, and that's what I needed. Like, to find. I had to literally find myself again and be like, okay, Haley, like, you know who you are, you know these red flags, you've seen this before, you know exactly what's happening. So what are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
So honestly, that's the best advice I can give, is just stop thinking about all this shit for a minute. Like, it doesn't matter. I know it feels like it does when you're living it, but it really doesn't. It doesn't matter. It's just made to make you feel like it's the most important thing in the world, because at that point it probably is your world. So just remove yourself as best as possible. Like I said, whatever that means for the individual, and just do a little bit of research, you know?
I know it's really hard to even bring yourself to think, even when you get on the internet, to not to Google Smart Circle or Google like reviews of the company that you're at now. Maybe you don't know that the Smart Circle owns it yet. I know that's probably really, really difficult just to even, because by the time you get home, you don't even want to look at your computer. And if you do, you're like on Facebook trying to see where your family's at. If you can possibly just take, like Haley said, just take that moment and take a review of your own business that you're in now as something, or kind of like take a look at the relationships around you and see that it's not like, I'm a very fact and based, like, I need to see tables and charts and facts and numbers before I'm convinced that something is wrong. When I got online and had a chance to see how Smart Circle actually works and is structured, that's all it took for my brain to realize I was not in the right place. That's all it took. And all the catalyst for that was a book on sales written 100 years ago. So just take that moment. And to all of you owners who pay yourselves, who get paid about $17,000 a year, and to all of you regional reps who probably don't make more than $40,000 a year, look at what you're doing. Is this the opportunity? Have you found it? Have you fulfilled your 4 Fs? Have you really found all of those things? Seriously, take a look at that. Examine it, because you're ruining other people's lives.